The silence of deep space shattered like crystal. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching her tactical display paint a picture that shouldn't exist. 12 massive shapes hung in the void beyond Proxima Centauri, each one dwarfing her battleship like a cathedral towers over a mouse. The alien vessels pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. Contact established 23 minutes ago, reported Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, his voice tight with barely controlled excitement. They're actually talking to us, Admiral. Sarah's weathered hands gripped the command rail. 40 years in the service, from the Mars colonies to the Outer Ring conflicts, and nothing had prepared her for this moment. First contact with an alien species. The thing humanity had dreamed about and feared in equal measure. Put them through, she ordered. The main screen flickered, revealing something that made her breath catch. The being before her was ancient beyond measure, skin like polished obsidian, eyes that held the weight of millennia, and a presence that spoke of civilizations risen and fallen before Earth's sun was even born. I am Kethvar of the Eternal Collective, the alien said, its voice resonating through their translation systems like distant thunder. We have observed your species for 7 of your rotations around your star. You call yourselves human. Sarah straightened, feeling the weight of her entire species on her shoulders. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Command. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Kethvar's features. Peace. Yes, we have seen your peace, human. We have watched your wars, your weapons, your creativity and destruction. Tell me, Admiral Chen, what do you call those metal constructs you ride between the stars? Our ships. Sarah frowned. These are battleships designed for battleships. Kethvar's voice carried a note Sarah had never heard before. Was it fear? In all our eons, across all the species we have encountered, none have named their vessels for war itself. Most call them harmony singers, or star dancers, or peace bringers. But you call them battleships. The alien leaned forward, and Sarah could see something in those ancient eyes that made her spine tingle. Do you know what that means to us, Admiral Chen? Do you understand what you have just revealed? Before Sarah could respond, her tactical officer's voice cut through the tension. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy buildups across their entire fleet. Whatever we just said, I don't think they liked it. Sarah's mind raced. In all their preparation for first contact, no one had considered that the very names of their ships might be seen as a threat. But there was something else in Kethvar's voice. Not just fear, but something deeper. Respect, perhaps? Kethvar, she said carefully. I think we need to talk. The alien's laugh was like the sound of stars dying. Oh, Admiral Chen, we have been talking. But I fear you do not yet understand what manner of species you represent. Your innocence in this moment is terrifying. The screen went dark, leaving Sarah staring at her own reflection. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, but she could feel the weight of the moment settling on all of them. Admiral, Webb whispered. What just happened? Sarah watched the alien ships on her display, noting how they'd shifted formation. Not aggressive exactly, but wary, like apex predators who'd just realized they were looking at something they didn't recognize, I think, she said slowly. We just taught them something new about fear. Augur, Chapter 2, The Weight of History. 3 hours later, Sarah sat in her ready room across from Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's xenobiologist and first contact specialist. The coffee between them had long since gone cold. I've been running the translation algorithms through every linguistic database we have, Elena said, her dark eyes haunted. The way Kethvar spoke about other species' ship names. Sarah, I think we're dealing with a galactic civilization that's been at peace for millennia. Sarah rubbed her temples. And we showed up calling our ships battleships, dreadnoughts, and destroyers. The Indomitable, Elena pointed out with a bitter smile. Don't forget that one. The Ready Room's comm system chimed. Admiral, came Webb's voice. They're hailing us again. Put it through here, Sarah ordered. Kethavar's image filled the small screen, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood other beings, tall, graceful creatures with crystalline features, small humanoids with tentacle-like appendages, and others that defied easy description. The delegation of species that had greeted humanity's first steps into deep space. Admiral Chen, Kethavar began, we have conferred with the other members of the collective. Your species presents us with a paradox we have not faced in over 2,000 of your years. Sarah leaned forward. What kind of paradox? You are clearly a violent species. This is evident in everything from your ship names to your historical broadcasts. Yet you approached us with words of peace. You could have attacked. Your vessels carry weapons of considerable power, but you chose diplomacy. One of the crystalline beings stepped forward, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I am Sarthel of the Resonance Clan. We have studied your transmissions, Admiral Chen. Your species wages war like no other we have encountered. You have weapons that can crack planets, strategies that would make our greatest military theorist weep with admiration. And yet here you are, Kethavar continued, asking for friendship. Elena cleared her throat. If I may, what makes you think we're so different from other species you've encountered? Kethavar's expression shifted to something almost paternal. Dr. Vasquez, in the past 5,000 years, the collective has welcomed 47 species into our galactic community. Each one went through the same process. They built vessels to explore the stars. They developed faster-than-light travel. They found us, or we found them. He paused, and Sarah could feel the weight of centuries in that silence. None of them, Kethavar continued, built their exploration vessels to fight. The Veltar called their ships dream swimmers. The Nethki named theirs harmony seekers. Even the most aggressive species we've encountered, the Kraldor, called their vessels honor defenders. Another being, this one resembling a walking tree with silver bark, spoke up. I am Rootsinger Velven. In all our history, only one other species built ships specifically for war. Only one other species named their exploration vessels for battle and conquest. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. What happened to them? They conquered half the galaxy before we could stop them, Kethavar said simply. It took the combined might of 37 species and 400 years of warfare to bring them down. We called them the Devourers, and their shadow still haunts our collective memory. Elena gripped Sarah's arm. But we're not them, she said quickly. We came here in peace. We're explorers, not conquerors. Kethavar's ancient eyes studied them both. Are you? Your admiral commanded a vessel called Indomitable, a name that speaks of never surrendering, never backing down. Your fleet includes ships named Retribution, Vengeance, and Unforgiven. These are not the names of explorers, Admiral Chen. These are the names of a species that thinks of the universe as something to be conquered. Sarah stood slowly, feeling the weight of every decision that had brought humanity to this moment. Outside her viewport, she could see the other ships of her fleet, the UES Relentless, the UES Iron Maiden, the UES Warhammer, names that had seemed so normal, so human just hours ago. You're right, she said quietly. We are a violent species. We've been fighting since we crawled out of the caves. We've had 2 world wars, countless smaller conflicts, and we've militarized everything from our exploration programs to our colonization efforts. She turned back to the screen, meeting Kethavar's gaze directly. But that's not all we are. Kethavar tilted his head. Explain. We name our ships for war because we've learned that the universe is dangerous. We carry weapons because we know that sometimes violence is the only thing that stops greater violence. But we also carry scientists, doctors, teachers, and artists. We came here not to conquer, but to learn. Sarah's voice grew stronger. You say you remember the Devourers. Well, we remember Hitler and Stalin and every other monster our species has produced. And we remember the people who stood up to them, the ones who said no when the darkness came. She stood straighter, every inch the military commander. So yes, we call our ships battleships, because we know that sometimes, to protect what you love, you have to be willing to fight for it. The screen went quiet. Sarah could see the alien delegation conferring among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of lights, sounds, and movements. Finally, Kethvar turned back to them. Admiral Chen, your words disturb us, but they, also, intrigue us. We have lived in peace for so long that we had forgotten what it means to be ready for war. Perhaps that is why the Devourers nearly succeeded. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a new weight. We would like to learn more about your species, about this concept of peace through strength that seems to guide you. But first, there is something you must know. Sarah felt her heart skip. What? The Devourers are not extinct, Admiral Chen. We drove them back, contained them, but never truly defeated them. For 800 years, they have been building their strength in the dark spaces between the stars, and our intelligence suggests they are preparing to return. The screen filled with images, dark ships moving through space, worlds consumed by some terrible hunger, entire solar systems going dark. We have grown soft in our peace, Admiral Chen. Perhaps it is time we learned from a species that names its ships for war. Chapter 3. The Shadow returns. Sarah stood in the war room aboard the Indomitable, surrounded by holographic displays showing the greatest military minds of two different worlds. On one side, her human officers analyzed tactical data, with the cold precision Earth's militaries had perfected over centuries of conflict. On the other, alien strategists who had lived through the first Devourer War shared knowledge that spanned lifetimes. The pattern is always the same, explained strategic thinker Kesseran, a being whose translucent skin revealed the neural networks firing beneath. They appear at the edge of a system, consume everything with biological matter, then move on. Planets, ships, people, all becomes fuel for their expansion. Commander Webb studied the tactical displays with growing unease. How many worlds have they taken in the past year? 17, Kethvar replied grimly. All on the outer rim of our territory. They're testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. Dr. Vasquez leaned over the central display, her scientific mind wrestling with what she was seeing. These aren't normal ships. They're alive. Biological constructs that can adapt and evolve in real time, which is why our traditional defenses have proven insufficient, admitted war singer Thelnora, a crystalline being whose form chimed softly with each word. Our ships are designed for peace, for exploration and harmony. We have weapons, but they are meant for precise strikes, minimal damage. The Devourers require a different approach. Sarah had been quiet throughout the briefing, but now she stepped forward. Show me their fleet composition. The hologram shifted, displaying the nightmare that was approaching. Massive bioships that seemed to writhe and pulse with their own life. Smaller fighter analogs that moved like living things, and at the center, something that made Sarah's blood run cold. That's their command ship, Kethvar explained. We call it the Hunger Mother. It's grown considerably since our last encounter. Sarah studied the massive organism, noting its defensive patterns and the way the smaller ships orbited it like antibodies protecting a vital organ. Her mind, trained in warfare since her academy days, began to see possibilities. You said they consume biological matter for fuel, she said slowly. What about inorganic materials? Metals, ceramics, synthetic compounds? Strategic thinker Kesseran's form flickered with interest. They ignore such materials entirely. In our previous encounters, they would strip away all organic components and leave the rest floating in space like debris. A cold smile spread across Sarah's face. Then they've never encountered a species that builds their ships out of steel and titanium. Webb caught on immediately. Admiral, you're thinking of ramming attacks? I'm thinking bigger than that, Sarah replied, turning to address the assembled alien commanders. You've been fighting these things like a police force trying to arrest criminals. Precise strikes, minimal collateral damage, always trying to preserve what you can. She gestured to the display showing the human fleet. We don't fight like that. When we go to war, we go to win, no matter the cost. War singer Thelnora's crystalline form darkened. Admiral Chen, you cannot be suggesting. I'm suggesting we give them something they've never faced before, Sarah interrupted. A species that's been perfecting the art of war for our entire existence. A species that builds ships specifically to destroy other ships. Kethvar stepped forward, his ancient eyes studying Sarah with new intensity. What are you proposing? Sarah turned to the tactical display, her fingers dancing across the controls to show fleet movements and attack patterns. The Devourers expect you to fight defensively, to try to preserve your ships and minimize casualties. They've adapted to that strategy over 800 years. She highlighted the positions of the human fleet. But they've never faced Earth's military doctrine. We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemy can never threaten anyone again. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Rootsinger Velden spoke, his voice like wind through autumn leaves. You are talking about total war, Admiral Chen, the kind of conflict that consumes civilizations. I'm talking about survival, Sarah replied firmly. The Devourers won't stop. They can't stop, it's their nature. So we give them something their nature can't adapt to. She pulled up detailed schematics of human weaponry. Nuclear weapons that can crack planets. Kinetic bombardment systems that can sterilize entire continents. Ships designed not just to fight, but to keep fighting even when they're dying. Dr. Vasquez looked troubled. Sarah, what you're describing, it's not just warfare. It's annihilation. Yes, Sarah replied simply. It is. Because sometimes, when you're facing an enemy that wants to consume everything you've ever loved, annihilation is the only moral choice. The alien commanders exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a complex symphony of light and sound. Finally, Kethvar spoke. Admiral Chen, what you propose goes against everything our civilization has stood for. We have built our society on the principle that all life is sacred, that violence should be the last resort. Sarah nodded. And that's why you're losing. The Devourers don't share your values. To them, you're not a civilization to be reasoned with, you're food to be consumed. She turned to face the assembled commanders. I'm not asking you to become like us. I'm asking you to let us be what we've always been. The species that stands between the darkness and everything worth protecting. Strategic thinker Kesseran's form pulsed with rapid calculations. The human fleet consists of only 47 vessels. Even with your advanced weaponry, you would be vastly outnumbered. Numbers don't win wars, Sarah replied. Will does, and humans have never learned how to surrender. Kethvar was quiet for a long moment, his ancient mind weighing options that would determine the fate of entire species. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. Very well, Admiral Chen. We will allow you to implement your Earth doctrine. But understand this. If you fail, there will be no second chance. The Devourers will consume everything in their path until they reach the heart of our civilization. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we won't fail. As the meeting dispersed, Webb approached his admiral with concern written across his face. Sarah, are you sure about this? What you're proposing, it's going to cost us everything. Sarah looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that vast darkness an enemy was approaching that would test everything humanity had ever learned about war. Marcus, she said quietly, we didn't come out here to play it safe. We came out here to show the universe what humans are capable of. And if that means we have to become the monsters that other monsters fear. She turned to him, her eyes hard as diamond. Then that's exactly what we'll do. Chapter 4. When monsters meet monsters, the battle began at 347 ship time, when the Devourer Vanguard dropped out of hyperspace like a plague of locusts descending on a wheat field. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching her tactical display paint a picture of nightmare-given form. The bioships were even more terrifying in person than the recordings had suggested. Writhing masses of organic matter that seemed to pulse with malevolent intelligence. Contact in 7 minutes, reported her tactical officer. Enemy fleet. Composition matches intelligence reports. 1 command vessel, 47 heavy bioships, approximately 3,000 fighter analogs. And they're heading straight for the colony world of Serenthea, Webb added grimly. 2 billion inhabitants. Sarah nodded, her face a mask of calm that hid the storm within. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the deadly efficiency that only came from a species that had been perfecting warfare for millennia. No panic, no hesitation, just the cold calculation of predators preparing to hunt. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Execute Protocol Omega." Across the void, 47, human vessels began to move in patterns no alien species had ever seen before, not the graceful dance-like maneuvers of the collective's harmony singers, but the brutal, efficient movements of ships designed for one purpose: to kill other ships and keep killing until nothing remained. The UES Retribution led the first. Attack Wing, its captain broadcasting on all frequencies as she closed with the enemy. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the United Earth Space Command. You have entered human-protected space. Turn back now, or we will demonstrate why our species conquered an entire planet before we even learned to fly." The Devourer's response was immediate and predictable. A swarm of biofighters launched from their larger vessels, moving with the fluid grace of living creatures. But as they closed with the human fleet, they encountered something their evolutionary algorithms hadn't prepared them for. "Activating point defense," Santos announced calmly. "Let's SU. How them what a real predator looks like." The Retribution's weapon systems came online with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel and the brutality of a chainsaw. Railgun rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed tore through biofighters like paper, while plasma cannons turned living ships into expanding clouds of superheated gas. But the Devourers adapted quickly. That was their nature. Within minutes, their fighters had learned to dodge the railgun rounds, to split and weave around the plasma bursts. What should have been a one-sided slaughter became a deadly dance. That's when the humans showed them what true warfare looked like. "All ships execute Hammerfall Protocol," Sarah ordered. The human fleet suddenly stopped trying to engage the fighters. Instead, they did something no species in the galaxy had attempted in over 1,000 years. They aimed directly for the Devourer's capital ships. The UES Iron Maiden launched its entire payload of nuclear warheads at the nearest bioship, not caring that enemy fighters swarmed around it like angry wasps. The ship's captain, a grizzled veteran named Chen Wei, laughed as his vessel shook under enemy fire. "You want to see how humans wage war?" he broadcast to the Devourers. "We don't fight fair. We don't fight clean. We fight to win." The nuclear warheads detonated in sequence, each explosion calculated to cause maximum damage to the organic vessel's structure. The bioship writhed and screamed, an actual scream that resonated across multiple frequencies, as its living hull was consumed by artificial suns. But the Iron Maiden paid a price for its aggression. Overwhelmed by fighter swarms, the ship's hull began to fail. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as atmosphere vented into space. The engine room was compromised, life support was failing, and by all rights, the ship should have withdrawn. Instead, Captain Chen ordered his ship to ram the dying biovessel. "This is Iron Maiden," he broadcast calmly as his ship accelerated into its death dive. "Tell them we went down fighting. Tell them we took one of the bastards with us." The collision was visible across the entire battle space, a brief, brilliant flash as two vessels, one metal and one flesh, annihilated each other in a mutual embrace of destruction. And that's when the Devourers learned their first lesson about human warfare. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to make sure their enemies learned to fear them. Kethvar, monitoring the battle from his command ship, watched in horrified fascination as the human fleet systematically dismantled Devourer tactics that had worked for centuries. "By the ancient lights," he whispered, "they're not just fighting them. They're teaching them that there are worse things than death." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Devourer vanguard had been completely destroyed, but at a terrible cost. 15 human ships had been lost, along with nearly 3,000 crew members. And yet, as Sarah stood on her damaged bridge, surrounded by the controlled chaos of damage reports and casualty lists, she felt something she hadn't expected. "Hope, Admiral," Webb reported, his voice hoarse from combat commands. "We're receiving transmissions from the main Devourer fleet. They're asking for terms." Sarah smiled, though there was no joy in it. "Put them through." The image that appeared on her screen was unlike anything the collective had ever recorded. A Devourer queen, but not the confident predator from their historical records. This creature looked uncertain, perhaps even afraid. "Human creatures," the queen spoke through their translation systems. "You fight like the ancient devourers of legend, like the species that consumed the first galaxy before even we were born. Why do you protect these soft flesh aliens?" Sarah straightened, feeling the weight of not just her own species, but of every species the Devourers had ever terrorized. "Because that's what humans do. We protect what can't protect itself, and we destroy what threatens what we protect." The Devourer Queen was silent for a long moment. "Your tactics are instructive. We had not considered that a species might choose mutual annihilation over surrender. This changes the parameters of engagement significantly." "It should," Sarah replied, "because if you come back, we'll show you just how creative humans can get when it comes to mutual annihilation." The transmission ended, and Sarah watched as the massive Devourer fleet turned away from collective space, disappearing into the dark between stars. "Admiral," Kethvar's voice came over the communication system, "we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You have saved not just Serenthia, but possibly our entire civilization." Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking of the crews who had given their lives to prove that humanity belonged among them. "No debt, Kethvar. This is what humans do. This is what we've always done." She turned to Webb, who was coordinating rescue operations for the survivors. "Marcus, prepare a full report for Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with a galactic civilization, and they're going to need to start building a lot more battleships." Webb grinned tiredly. "Think they'll approve of our diplomatic methods?" Sarah's laugh was sharp as a blade's edge. "Marcus, we just introduced an entire galaxy to the concept of peace through superior firepower. I think they're going to love it." As the human fleet began the long journey home, leaving behind a galaxy that would never again underestimate the species that named its exploration vessels for war, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what other challenges awaited humanity among the stars. Whatever they were, she was certain of one thing: they would face them the human way. With courage, determination, and enough firepower to crack planets. After all, they were the species that had taught the universe's greatest predators the meaning of fear. Epilogue: The New Paradigm. 6 months after the Battle of Serenthia, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the gardens of the Collective's capital world, watching alien children play games that now included toy battleships alongside the traditional harmony singers. The changes had been profound and swift. The Collective, faced with the reality that their peaceful existence had made them vulnerable to predators like the Devourers, had begun the largest military expansion in their history. But it wasn't just about building weapons. It was about learning to think like warriors when necessary. "The children adapt faster than the adults," observed Dr. Vasquez, joining Sarah on the garden path. "They see the logic immediately. Sometimes you need protectors who are willing to be monsters so you don't have to be." Sarah nodded, watching a young crystalline being command a fleet of toy battleships against cardboard devourers. "Kethvar told me they're renaming their exploration vessels. The new ships will have names like Guardian's Sword and Protector's Shield." "It's a start." "And the Devourers?" "Long-range scouts report they've withdrawn to the Galactic Rim. They're regrouping, learning. The next time they come, they'll be ready for human tactics." Elena looked troubled. "So we didn't really win. We just bought time." Sarah's smile was grim but satisfied. "Elena, in warfare, buying time is often the same thing as winning. The Collective is building ships, training crews, learning to think strategically instead of just harmoniously. When the Devourers return, they won't be facing the same soft targets they've been picking off for the past year." She gestured to the skyline, where new shipyards were taking shape alongside the traditional bioarchitectural structures. "They'll be facing a galaxy that's learned to fight back. A familiar voice interrupted their conversation. "Admiral Chen, if you have a moment." Sarah turned to see Kethvar approaching, his ancient features carrying an expression she'd learned to recognize as determination. Behind him walked a delegation of beings she didn't recognize, tall, armored creatures with predatory eyes, and weapons that looked disturbingly familiar. "Kethvar," Sarah said carefully. "New friends?" "In a manner of speaking," the ancient alien replied. "Admiral Chen, I'd like you to meet the Kraldor Warpack. They've requested permission to study human military doctrine." The lead Kraldor stepped forward, its armored form clicking with mechanical precision. "Admiral Chen, we are the species. Your people would call honorable warriors. We fight when necessary, but always with rules, always with constraints. The Devourers nearly destroyed us because they have no honor, no rules." Its predatory eyes fixed on Sarah with unmistakable respect. "We wish to learn from the species that taught monsters to fear. We wish to learn how to fight without honor when honor itself is a weakness." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The implications were staggering. A galaxy of peaceful species learning to wage war from humanity, and now even the warrior species wanted to learn their methods. "You understand what you're asking?" she said carefully. "Human military doctrine isn't just about tactics and weapons. It's about being willing to do whatever it takes to protect what you love, even if that means becoming something terrible." The Kraldor's laugh was like the sound of swords clashing. "Admiral Chen, we have studied your species' history. You have faced monsters of your own making, dictators, tyrants, genocidal maniacs. And each time, you produced other humans willing to become monsters to stop them." It gestured to its companions. "We wish to learn that willingness, to become the monsters that hunt other monsters so our civilians never have to." Sarah looked at Kethvar, who nodded gravely. "The Collective Council has approved the exchange program. Human military advisors will train selected personnel from each member species in Earth doctrine." As the delegation departed, Elena shook her head in amazement. "Sarah, do you realize what just happened? We didn't just make first contact, we're reshaping an entire galactic civilization." Sarah watched the alien children continue their games, noting how they'd started incorporating human tactics into their play. "Elena, remember what I told Kethvar when we first met? That sometimes to protect what you love, you have to be willing to fight for it?" "Yes. I think we're about to find out if an entire galaxy can learn that lesson." Above them, the first joint human-alien patrol ship launched from the orbital shipyards, its hull bearing both human weapon systems and alien biotechnology. It was sleek, deadly, and beautiful in the way that only perfectly designed instruments of war could be. Its name, painted in both human script and alien symbols, read, UCS Harmony's Sword. As Sarah watched it disappear into the starfield, she couldn't help but smile. Humanity had come to the stars seeking knowledge and friendship. Instead, they'd become the teachers of a new kind of peace, the peace that came from ensuring that those who threatened innocence would learn to fear the consequences. In the distance, space-based sensors detected the first signs of Devourer scouts returning to test the new defenses. But this time, they wouldn't be facing the same soft targets that had fallen so easily before. This time, they would face a galaxy that had learned from the species that named its ships for war. And Sarah Chen, Admiral of the United Earth Space, command and protector of the Galactic Collective, had never been more proud to be human. The stars, it seemed, had been waiting for a species like humanity, a species willing to be the monsters that other monsters feared, so the innocent could sleep safely in the dark. It was, she reflected, a pretty good job description for humanity's role in the galaxy. After all, someone had to teach the universe what it meant to fight like humans. And as the first reports came in of Devourer scouts fleeing rather than engaging the new joint patrols, Sarah knew they were off to an excellent start. The age of human protected space had begun.